Hello and welcome to another One Piece latest chapter review with one of the most exciting chapters ever. A chapter with all the new information about King and his race, as well as a flashback to Zoro's past that we were all eager to see. Also, we have new information about the famous family of Wano, Shimotsuki, and their famous swords Enma and Wado ichimonji. All in all in this beautiful chapter, so let's get right into it. The name of this chapter is Shimotsuki Kozaburo, the legendary blacksmith of Wano, whom we heard about in the beginning of this arc. Seeing Tashigi in the cover of this chapter and exactly under the name of Shimotsuki cannot be a coincidence, and I think Oda is just trolling us so that he might later connect Tashigi with Kuina or even the samurai and Wano. Fortunately, we start this chapter from where it ended last week, the breathtaking fight between Zoro and King. From the beginning of this chapter, we see that Zoro still have difficulty controlling Enma, and Enma doesn't follow Zoro's order. King approached Zoro and sarcastically asked him if he has trouble carrying his sword, then stand in front of Zoro. Zoro, surprised by this, strikes King. King mockingly says it's a direct hit. Till the end of this battle, we will see a lot of down talking from King to Zoro, and it is normal. King believes that Zoro is inferior to him and just toying with him right now. This fight is similar to Luffy against Katakuri and Zoro vs Mr. One, whose opponents were a head and neck stronger than them, and they must work hard to defeat these enemies and awaken a new power during the battle. As for Zoro, in the previous battle, it was the ability to cut iron.
俺に本当に鋼鉄を切る力があるかどうかだ。一刀流居合、獅子孫孫。礼を言う。俺はまだまだ強くなれる。
本当にこの勝負の間に成長しまいやがった。
And for Luffy was advanced observation haki. In this war too, we are lucky to see Luffy and Zoro awaken new abilities. After Zoro hits King, King explodes. This explosion is something like one of the Doflamingo commanders Gladius could do by blowing himself up. Most likely this ability of his is related to the burning fire on his back, and the reason he is not harmed is that his race is able to survive against fire and is fireproof like dragons. Another person we should mention is Ichiji, who also used his explosive powers in his battle against Katakuri, which his father may have put in his DNA. Then we go to Sanji vs Queen. Queen tells Sanji that Zoro has no chance against King, just as Pudding told Sanji that Luffy can defeat Katakuri. These reminders that Oda uses really add to the beauty of his work. Queen tells Sanji that King is a Lunarian survivor, and that they are supposed to be extinct. Those monsters had the ability to survive in any situation and were considered gods in the past. Sanji then asks a very interesting and clever question, and that is, how could these monsters get wiped out? Queen responds, you have to find the answer yourself. Yes, finally King's race have been revealed. The Lunarians race was actually people who lived on the moon and had advanced technology and unhuman powers. It's possible that, as Zoro said in the previous chapter and Queen in this episode, the secret of King's defeat lies in his race and his backstory. Zoro survived King attack using haki. He then strikes King with a one-sword attack, which as he says is one of his strongest attacks, which again has no effect on King. King immediately attacks Zoro from a close distance with the attack we saw in the previous chapter, which had a great destructive power even from a far distance. Zoro, surprised that his attack had no effect on King, he then tries to block King's attack, but Enma starts draining Zoro's haki again. Zoro hardly dodged it, but he gets gets hit partly by the attack. King starts mocking Zoro again and says this is the first time I have seen a swordsman defeated by his own sword. The attack is so powerful that part of the Iceland gets destroyed. Zoro tries hard to catch Sandai Katetsu before it falls into the ocean. Meanwhile, King kicks him to the ground with a fire attack while asking Zoro if he has lost his mind, risking his life to save a sword. And now, as Zoro gathering his swords, we see a flashback to each of the swords and how Zoro got them, as if each of them is a different person. The first one is Sandai Katetsu, which Zoro took from an old man in Logo Town, which created the breathtaking scene of Zoro's test of courage. Next one is Wado Ichimonji, which was originally for Kuina and then passed to Zoro. And then, while Zoro holds that sword, he vowed to one day become a swordsman whose name is heard even in heavens. Heavens, where gods live. King was once known as a god, and his race is the Lunarium, which was taken from the moon. As the blacksmith Katetsu said, it is destiny that Zoro have Wado Ichimonji, a sword made by the same blacksmith who made enma. Now Zoro wonders why a sword made in Wano was found in East Blue. King continues to rain down his attacks on Zoro, causing Zoro to be thrown into the palace. Here Zoro remembers his conversation about snatch with Momo. Zoro told Momo that he had heard this from an old geezer in his village and he has never used it himself. The old man was always sitting on the beach, and it's really funny how Zoro say he didn't even bother learning his name, and only after he dies Zoro realized that he was Kuina's grandfather. Now we see a flashback from Zoro and the old man who teaches Zoro about snatch. Child Zoro, who gives the same vibe as Luffy's childhood moments, tells him that he never thinks he will use it because it sounds weird. He then asks the old man if it's true that he is a samurai. The geezer tells Zoro to be quiet or the navy will come after him. Zoro answers, why would the navy come after an old man like you? This is another question we need to know the answer to. When we see the geezer admires Zoro's effort and commitment, he asks him the reason for all this training. Zoro answers that he lost to Kuina again and he must practice non-stop. The old man gives Zoro 2 swords and tells him to practice with that. Then he adds that he can only make weak swords like this nowadays. The geezer then educates Zoro and us about swords. Swords are made to cut people, he says. Each sword is like a person which has its own unique personality, and the swordsman is the one who tames this sword's wild nature and bends it to his will. I really enjoyed when he said it's a joke that deadly swords are believed to be cursed. This is how named blades are. Let the weak spread their nonsense. Now everything is getting clear to us. Just as Zoro was able to sense Sandai Katetsu in Logo Town, and the way he was able to feel Wado Ichimonji under the rocks in Alabasta, even the way Zoro treated his broken sword Yubashiri and buried it like a person showed that swords are more than a mere tool. The geezer then says that he created his best swords in his youth, and the temperament of that sword was so strong that even when you held it in your hand you could feel it, and he named the blade after the Lord of the Underworld, Enma, Lord of the Underworld.
Enma.
It finally hits Zoro, and now he putting the pieces of the puzzle together. The name of the village he grew up in was Shimotsuki, and it's said that it was made by pirates. Zoro says that this is not a coincidence, that geezer was actually a samurai of Wano, Shimotsuki Kozaburo, and his masterpiece was Enma. Now Zoro understands why Enma behaves like that. As Kozaburo said, a good sword stays wild until it finds its master. Enma is testing Zoro Zoro's will. I really like how Zoro asks Enma, "You want to tell me that Oden could easily carry you even though this amount of haki was coming out of him, Enma?" Then we see a number of Kaido's soldiers who notice Zoro and intend to attack him. Zoro asks himself, "What should I do? If I continue to pour my haki into it like this, I may die." But we all know that Zoro is not afraid of this. Next we see all the soldiers fallen on the ground unconscious, and Zoro holding his 3 swords while haki is pouring out of them. King tells him, "So you too have the king's ambition." And a glorious ending with a flashback where it all begins with the meeting of Luffy and Zoro. And while Zoro saying, "Yes, you are right, I made a promise to my best friend and captain." What a goosebombing chapter. We were all waiting for these scenes and we knew that this arc Zoro was going to shine. In fact, since Timescape we have never seen Zoro have a difficult battle that requires him to overcome his limit. This haki scene reminds me of the confrontation between Shanks and Whitebeard, the way Whitebeard soldiers fell on the ground because of Shanks' haki. It looked very similar to this panel. Here, the conqueror haki looks different from when we saw Luffy and Zoro use it before. It looks like that haki was keep pouring out of Zoro's swords. King was not surprised to see that Zoro had conqueror haki, which indicates that he probably have it too, and this may be one of the reasons for his high tolerance. Just as Luffy and Zoro could not injure Kaido before using conqueror haki coating. We got a lot of information in this chapter, but I don't think that this is the end of information about Zoro's past. As Zoro said in this chapter, these events are not accidental. Tashigi on the cover page, Wado ichimonji being with Zoro, the fact that everyone who sees Zoro gives him a sword, including Shimotsuki Kazobaro and the blacksmith in the local town, and none other than Shimotsuki Ryuma, the god of the blade himself.
かつて伝説の侍が腰にした名刀修水。あなたが主人であるならこの刀も本望でしょう。
Kawamatsu and the others also pointed out that Zoro is very similar to Shimotsuki Oshimaru, the old daimyo of Ringo. I hope we get to find more about Zoro's past soon. Also, King and his past would be one of the beautiful flashbacks of Wano. The first step to discover this secret is to remove the mask on King's face, which he was very upset when Zoro damaged it. These dilemmas in which both Zoro and Sanji have found themselves in and decided to go beyond their limits and sacrifice themselves for the future Pirate King are truly unparalleled.
てめえの野望はどうしたバカ。てめえ。今はまだ海軍は俺を軽く見てるが、後々この一味で最も厄介な存在になるのはこの黒足のサンジだ。
After the end of this arc, the Straw Hats will finally be a Yonko level crew. Enma and controlling it seems to be the secret of Zoro's victory in this battle. Zoro had already activated his conqueror haki in his battle with Kaido, and now he's only using it consciously. And I think we will see more power-ups from Zoro in this battle, maybe a flashback from Zoro and Mihuk practicing, and finally we may see Zoro make Enma into a black blade. After this fight, we can assume that Zoro have reached the level of Oden or even stronger, who was one of the few people who were able to bring Kaido to the ground, and with this he has taken a big step towards achieving his dream of being the best swordsman in the world. Hope you guys enjoyed this chapter. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet and hit the notification button so you don't miss any new videos. See you till next time.